Why do we always need to look for faces in shadows? The hallway is almost dark. A jacket hangs from a chair. A crack of streetlight reaches through the blinds, catches the collar, and drops two pale buttons above a dark fold of fabric. For half a second, there is a face looking back at you. You do not decide to see it. Your eyes land on the shape. Your body gives it a tiny jolt of attention, and only afterward does the ordinary explanation arrive. It is a jacket. It has never watched anyone in its life, yet the face was there first. That reflex has a name: face pareidolia. It is the tendency to see a face in something that is not a face. The front of a car, the holes in a power outlet, foam on coffee, bark on a tree, the moon, a curtain, a damp stain on a wall. Shadows are especially good at it because shadows remove information while leaving just enough structure behind to make a dangerous suggestion. The strange part is not that a dark room can fool you. The strange part is how little evidence it needs. Two darker patches, something like a brow, a line below them, and the visual system begins treating a random arrangement of light as a possible living presence. We do not always look for faces in shadows. People differ in how often they notice them, and a face-like pattern does not fool everyone in the same way. But most of us carry a visual system that is extremely reluctant to ignore the possibility of a face. That reluctance is not a glitch added on top of normal vision. It is part of how normal vision works. A face is one of the most valuable things a human being can detect. A face can tell you that another person is close. It can hint at where they are looking. It can suggest anger, fear, pain, interest, recognition, or a request for help. In a small group, a familiar face can mean family, alliance, protection, obligation, jealousy, warning, food shared around a fire, or a conflict that needs to be settled before it turns physical. A face is also a moving target. It turns away. It hides behind grass. It appears through smoke. It is partly covered by a doorway, a branch, a sleeping blanket, or darkness, waiting for a perfect, well-lit portrait before noticing one would be a terrible design choice for a social animal. So the visual system starts broad. It looks for the rough geometry first, features high on a head-like shape, a pair of dark regions where eyes could be, a lower region where a mouth might be, a general upright arrangement that makes biological sense. This rough scan is fast because it has to be. Fine details can come later, after attention has already shifted toward the possible face. That is why a mask can work even when it is crude. That is why a child can turn 3 circles and a curved line into a person. That is why the front of a house can appear stern, sleepy, cheerful, or suspicious. The face detector is not waiting for eyelashes, skin pores, or a name. It is asking a simpler question. Could this be a face worth checking? Detection and recognition are not the same task. Detecting a face means noticing that face-like structure may be present. Recognition means working out who the person is, whether the expression is genuine, where the gaze is aimed, what the head is doing, and what the moment means. The first task can run on a blurry suggestion. The second demands much better evidence. That is why you can see a face in the grille of an old car while knowing perfectly well that the car has no identity to recognize. The detector has found a plausible arrangement. The recognition system cannot complete the job, so the object remains a strange hybrid, clearly a car, briefly face-like, and never a person. Orientation matters too. Turn a real face upside down, and it becomes harder to read as a normal face. Turn a face-like object upside down, and much of its strange pull can disappear. The individual features are still there, but their usual relationship is broken. 2 eyes at the bottom and a mouth above them no longer fit the quick template as well. This is a clue that pareidolia is not caused merely by spotting circles or dark spots. It depends on their arrangement. Symmetry adds to the effect. Natural faces are not perfectly symmetrical, but they are organized around a central axis. 1 eye on each side, a nose in the middle, a mouth below. The world makes accidental near symmetry all the time. A pair of windows sits above a door. Two headlights sit above a grill. A double knot in a plank sits over a crack. In low light, the small differences that expose these arrangements as ordinary objects may vanish. The face-like layout survives. The detector also works across astonishing variation. A human face can be young or old, still or moving, partly hidden or turned sideways, lit by noon sun or firelight, smiling or bleeding, familiar or unknown. A system built only for one standard portrait would miss too much. Broad tuning is the price of flexibility. Pareidolia is what broad tuning looks like when the world hands it a coincidence. Shadows make that question hard to answer. In bright daylight, color, texture, depth, and sharp edges quickly reveal what an object is. The knot in a tree becomes bark. The dark patch under a roof becomes a window. The shape beside the path becomes a trash bag, a stone, or a folded umbrella. Darkness strips away much of that evidence. Edges blur, color fades. Separate objects fuse together. A branch overlaps a fence. A curtain fold joins a strip of reflected light. The result is a visual scene full of partial clues and missing context. Your eyes are still receiving light, but they are receiving a thin, unreliable version of the scene. Vision has to fill in the gaps. That phrase can sound mystical, as if the brain were making up a private world. It is doing something more ordinary and more impressive. At every moment, the visual system combines incoming information with prior knowledge about what kinds of things usually exist in the world. A dim, incomplete shape could be many things. The brain weighs possibilities quickly, often before conscious thought has time to argue. A shadow near the floor might be a shoe, a pet, a pile of clothes, or a crouched person. The evidence is weak. If a few marks line up in a face-like pattern, the face possibility gets a boost. The brain does not declare, with courtroom certainty, that someone is in the room. It raises the flag. Check this. That difference matters. A momentary face in a shadow is usually not a hallucination. There's a real pattern of light and dark in front of you. The error lies in the interpretation, not in the existence of the stimulus. When you move closer, switch on a lamp, or change the angle, more information arrives, and the face falls apart into cloth, wood, reflection, or dust. The experience can feel immediate because it is immediate. Brain imaging studies have found that face-like objects can produce an early response in regions of visual cortex that are selective for faces. In one set of experiments, illusory faces were initially represented more like real faces than like similar non-face objects. Within roughly a quarter of a second, that representation shifted, and the object was treated more like the ordinary object it was. The same rapid system has another limitation. It cannot wait for a complete inventory of every object in the scene. It has to distribute attention. A face-like pattern may receive a priority tag because faces usually deserve a closer look. In laboratory tasks, face-like objects can break through visual suppression faster than matched non-face objects, although real faces still have a stronger and more reliable advantage. That is exactly what you would expect from an alarm that is sensitive, but not fully convinced. Later, processing can overrule the alarm. The eyes examine texture. Depth becomes clearer. Memory supplies the object category. The apparent face belongs to a mailbox, a socket, a carved pumpkin, a dashboard, or a shower drain. This later stage does not erase the early response from history. It replaces it with a better explanation. That replacement is why most people do not stay frightened by a face in a shadow. The nervous system is not designed to keep every suspicion alive forever. It is designed to make fast, cheap checks and then update. A single glimpse says possible face. A second glance says laundry. The correction is part of the same competence as the mistake. That sequence is almost comically fast. A coat can briefly be processed as a face, then as a coat, before you have had time to form a full sentence about it. Your conscious mind receives the finished correction and may laugh at itself. The first alarm has already done its job. This is one reason face pareidolia feels different from simply noticing a resemblance. You can look at a cloud and deliberately decide that it resembles a rabbit. That can be playful, slow, and imaginative. A face in a shadow often arrives with more force. It seems to pop forward. The pattern catches attention before you have chosen to study it. Experiments support that sense of priority, though the details need caution. In some tasks, people detect objects with illusory faces more quickly than closely matched objects without them. Other research finds that the attention advantage is limited compared with the advantage real faces have. A fake face is not processed exactly like a human face. It is better understood as a false alarm from a detector that shares some early machinery with real face perception. That is a far more useful system than one that treats every visual category with equal suspicion. A face matters differently from a chair. A chair does not glance at you, recruit allies, recognize your expression, or show fear before an attack. A human being can. So can many animals, at least in ways that make their head, gaze, and posture worth noticing. The evolutionary explanation begins there, but it should not be told as a neat campfire story. No researcher can point to one prehistoric night and say, this was when humans evolved to see faces in shadows. Natural selection does not preserve a fossil record of every visual mistake. We cannot prove that a particular ancestor survived because he mistook a tree knot for a rival's eyes. What we can say is narrower and stronger. Humans are primates with a powerful face processing system. Faces are socially important, and broad face detection creates false positives as a predictable cost. A system tuned to catch every possible face, even faint and partial ones, will sometimes fire when the world presents a face-shaped accident. From a survival perspective, that trade-off can make sense. Missing a genuine face nearby may have carried a cost. Failing to notice a companion, a stranger, a child, a predator's head, or a person whose expression and direction of gaze mattered. Mistaking a coat for a face usually costs a glance, a faster heartbeat, and perhaps the embarrassment of turning on a light. That does not mean every false positive was adaptive, or that every shadow face comes from fear. Social attention is at least as important as danger. In human life, faces were not merely threats to spot. They were the center of cooperation, attachment, teaching, courtship, status, and care. An oversensitive face detector may be the side effect of being a species that has spent much of its history living among other minds. The pattern may also have deep roots in primate perception. Rhesus monkeys have been shown to look longer at objects that human observers judge as containing illusory faces than at matched objects without them. Their eye movements also lingered around the apparent eyes and mouth in a face-like way. That does not mean a monkey is silently inventing ghost stories about a tree trunk. It does suggest that sensitivity to face-like geometry is not just a modern human habit learned from cartoons, social media, and electrical outlets. Even newborn humans show an early bias towards simple face-like configurations. Dark features arranged high above another feature in the rough layout of two eyes and a mouth. Yet that finding also needs restraint. A newborn preference does not prove that adult pareidolia is produced by one fixed ancient module. Face perception develops through experience. Babies learn individual faces, expressions, voices, movement, and social meaning. Adults bring decades of memories and expectations to every glance. The broad detector and the learned interpreter work together. One is ready to notice a possible face. The other decides whether the face is your brother, a stranger, a celebrity, an exhausted coworker, or a towel draped over the back of a chair. That partnership helps explain another odd feature of pareidolia. Fake faces often seem to have emotions. A car grill can look pleased. A drain can look alarmed. A piece of fruit can look offended. The object has no muscles, no mood, no eyes, and no intention. Still, people often agree that its apparent expression is cheerful, angry, sad, or surprised. The reason is partly geometric. In real faces, the position and angle of eyes, eyebrows, and mouths carry useful social information. A downward slant near the center of a face can be read as anger. Raised features can suggest surprise. A curved line low on the face can look like a smile. When a random object contains a similar arrangement, the same interpretive habits can spill over. Research using illusory faces suggests that the brain does not stop at merely saying face-like object detected. In some conditions, judgments of expression in these objects show patterns related to the way people process expression in real faces. This does not mean we genuinely believe the toaster is furious. It means the visual system is willing to apply face-reading tools to a pattern that has passed the first rough test. That is why a shadow can be more unnerving when its false face seems to be staring directly at you. A dark window with two reflections may become eyes. A gap beneath them may become a mouth. Once gaze enters the interpretation, the object no longer feels like a neutral shape. It feels oriented. It seems to have an inside, a point of view, a possible intention. Of course, it does not. The feeling arrives before the correction. This also explains why the same corner of a room can look harmless at noon and strangely occupied at 2 in the morning. The room is not changing its personality. The evidence available to your eyes is changing, and your expectations may be changing with it. At night, the familiar objects around you lose their usual detail. A lamp becomes a silhouette. A mirror turns into a rectangle of blackness. A coat becomes a body-shaped interruption in the wall. Context matters because perception is never built from light alone. After a scary movie, after hearing a sound downstairs, or after waking suddenly from a vivid dream, the mind is already prepared to consider certain possibilities. That preparation does not create a face from nothing. It changes how quickly a vague pattern reaches the threshold for worth checking. The same process operates in less dramatic places. In a crowded airport, you may think you see a friend's face and turn toward a stranger. In a forest, a pair of pale leaves can look like eyes. In a low-resolution security image, the brain may seize on a face where the pixels do not justify one. In a satellite photograph, a ridge can become a profile. The visual system prefers meaningful structure over empty noise, especially when the structure resembles a socially important category. Faces are unusually good at triggering this response because they are both simple and complex. The rough pattern is simple enough to appear by accident. 2 marks near the top, 1 mark lower down, maybe an outline around them. But a real face carries enormous complexity. It holds identity, age, attention, emotion, familiarity, and social history. That gives the brain a lot of reasons to check the pattern, even when the first evidence is weak. A tiger's face can be hidden behind grass, but 2 forward-facing eyes are still worth noticing. A person's face can appear at the entrance of a shelter, behind a rock, or beyond the edge of a fire's light. The setting has changed from savanna and forest to bedrooms, parking lots, subway platforms, and glowing phone screens. The old visual problem remains. Decide quickly whether a patch of contrast belongs to a living agent. Still, face pareidolia should not be reduced to a predator alarm. If fear were the whole explanation, most fake faces would feel threatening. Many do not. Plenty look silly, sleepy, happy, or deeply confused. A child sees a face in a pancake because the same broad detector responds to a familiar arrangement, even in a safe kitchen at breakfast. The system is tuned to faces, not merely danger. People sometimes describe a particular room, tree, or building as having a face, as though the face were an objective property waiting to be discovered. In one limited sense, that is fair. The physical pattern is really there, and another observer may notice it too. But the object does not contain a hidden person. It contains features arranged in a way that activates a category your mind knows extremely well. Culture can decide what story people attach to the pattern. One person sees a guardian, another sees a monster, another sees a cartoon character. The basic pull of the configuration may be widespread, while the meaning placed on it comes from memory, local beliefs, fear, humor, and whatever happened 5 minutes before the lights went out. Pareidolia gives you the face. Context gives it a biography, and the detector is not perfectly universal. One person sees a face in a cracked wall immediately, another sees only plaster. One person finds a tree trunk amusing, another feels watched by it. Individual variation can reflect differences in attention, experience, personality, visual strategy, and the particular image. The right question is not why every human sees every face in every shadow. The question is why the possibility is so easy for the human visual system to entertain. There is an important boundary here. Common pareidolia is a normal response to an ambiguous external pattern. A wall stain, a cloud, a shadow, or a piece of toast supplies something for the brain to interpret. Experiences of seeing detailed figures or faces without an external pattern, especially when persistent or distressing, are a different matter and can have many causes. A single face in a dark curtain is not a diagnosis of anything. It is a reminder that perception is an active process. That active process is easy to forget because seeing feels effortless. Open your eyes and the world seems to arrive fully labeled: door, table, hand, dog, person, face. But the labels are not printed on light. Your nervous system creates them from fragments. It uses edges, contrast, movement, symmetry, past experience, and probability. Most of the time, this works so smoothly that you never notice the guesses. Pareidolia exposes the guesswork for an instant. It lets you catch the visual system in the act of being useful and wrong at the same time. A shadow is a perfect stage for this mistake because it is not a thing. It is the absence of direct light shaped by other things. It can borrow the outline of a chair, the darkness of a doorway, the motion of leaves, and the hard edge of a window frame. A shadow can place two dark spots inside an oval. It can add a brow with a curtain rod. It can remove the details that would reveal the trick. Then your brain does what it has learned to do extraordinarily well. It asks whether somebody is there. The answer may be no. In most modern hallways, it is definitely no. But the question itself is worth asking before the eyes move on. A face could matter. A face could change what you do next. That small urgency is built into the way we notice one another. So when a pile of laundry seems to watch you from a chair, the sensible response is not to admire your own irrationality. It is to recognize a very fast bargain being made inside your visual system. Better to inspect one useless shadow than to overlook a meaningful face. Better to raise attention for a moment than to demand certainty before you are allowed to look. The jacket never had a face. The streetlight, buttons, folds, and darkness merely assembled a pattern that your brain had been practicing for a lifetime to recognize. For one fraction of a second, it recognized you back.